I walked into the conference hall and there she was. Linda standing under the spotlight, waiting to claim the vice president title she had traded our marriage for. She didn't know I was the man behind the silent takeover, the man who now owned the company she sacrificed everything to climb. And next to her, Eric Doyle, the man she'd been sneaking around with, thinking I'd never find out. But I knew. I knew about the hotel receipts, the late nights at the office, and the whispers she thought I'd never hear. As Eric's name was called, I stepped forward, the room freezing as I read out his termination for sexual misconduct and fraud. Linda's face went pale. She realized in that moment the husband she thought was just a simple man was now her boss. And the reckoning had just begun. They say a man knows when something's off at home. I felt it the day Linda came back late, dropping her keys on the counter without looking at me. Her perfume different, stronger, like she was trying to hide something. I'm Grant Aldridge, 62, and I've built a life out of reading the fine print others ignore, but nothing prepared me for the fine print in my own marriage. That evening, I stood by the window, looking out over the Texas plains as the sun dipped low, that burning orange line fading under the miles of land I worked my whole life to own. Linda said she was staying late at Sterling for a budget review. But her phone, left charging on the counter, buzzed with a message that lit up the screen. Don't forget the red dress. E. The moment I read that, the silence in the room felt like it was pressing on my chest. The house, the land, the quiet mornings we shared over black coffee. Everything felt like a lie hanging in the warm Texas air. I didn't throw the phone, I didn't scream. I did what I've always done. I took a breath and started planning. The next morning, I checked the security feed from the house. I watched Linda walk in while she was supposed to be in a meeting, heading upstairs, pulling a small red bag from the closet, checking her hair in the mirror. The timestamp? 2:13 p.m. She wasn't supposed to be home, and that's when I knew. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was fact. If you've ever felt that cold wave of betrayal from someone you trusted most, let me know in the comments. I want to hear from men like you, men who face that moment when your world tilts and you realize you're about to fight for your dignity. But Linda had no idea what was coming next. You know what they don't tell you about betrayal? It's not the loud moments that break you. It's the quiet ones when you're sitting in your truck, engine running, watching your wife walk into a hotel you've never seen before. The day after I saw that text, I told Linda I was heading out to check on a property near San Antonio, about 80 miles south. Truth is, I parked across from the Copper Ridge Inn, a place that charges $150 a night for executive stays. I watched Linda step out of her Ford, hair curled just so, that red dress hugging her like it was made for one purpose. At 1:25 p.m., she checked in. At 1:32 p.m., Eric Doyle walked in after her, looking around like a man who thought he was untouchable. The dashboard clock ticked, each minute a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. My hand rested on the steering wheel, gripping it until my knuckles turned white. My pulse stayed steady, though. Years in business taught me that emotion ruins leverage, and I wasn't going to lose my leverage. That night, back home, Linda kissed my cheek and thanked me for understanding her long hours. She smelled like hotel soap and cheap cologne. I looked her in the eye and told her I'd always support her career. She smiled, thinking she still controlled the narrative, but I was already contacting my attorney and my financial advisor. I started tracing Sterling Equity's shareholders, discovering just how vulnerable their ownership structure was. Linda thought she was trading me for a promotion. She had no idea I was about to buy the very ground she stood on. Fellas, Have you ever caught someone red-handed but kept your cool to play the long game? Drop a "I've been there" in the comments if you know that feeling. Because that was the moment I decided, if she wanted power, I'd show her what real power looked like. Most folks think power is loud, barking orders, slamming doors, throwing threats. Let me tell you, real power is silent, patient, and strikes when no one expects. 2 weeks after watching Linda and Eric at that hotel, I was sitting in my study, lights low, papers spread across my old oak desk. I had charts of Sterling Equity's shareholder breakdown cross-checked with LLCs and trusts. It was a mess like most small private firms, and it was exactly what I needed. Through Summit Point Holdings and 4 shell companies I set up years ago, I started buying in. 10% here, 5% there, quietly from retirees looking to cash out or partners wanting to exit. No one questioned the checks or the wire transfers as long as the numbers made sense. Linda would come home each night, dropping her heels by the door, pouring herself a glass of cheap Chardonnay, and talking about the big changes coming at Sterling. She was excited about her promotion, telling me how close she was to getting the VP role, how Eric was pushing for her. She said it like she was confiding in me, like I was still the old man who would smile and nod. I smiled all right, and every time she talked about her company, I was sitting on the other side of the kitchen island signing documents that made her company mine. The day I secured 51% ownership through my attorney, I sat alone on the back porch, the Texas wind carrying the scent of mesquite and dust, whiskey in hand, and I let myself feel it for just a moment, the cold satisfaction, the promise of justice. Gentlemen, have you ever taken back control without a single shout, without a single threat? Drop me a quiet strength in the comments if you know that feeling. Because Linda was about to walk into her promotion ceremony thinking she owned her future. She didn't know she was about to shake hands with her new boss. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie, a dark navy, subtle, just like the suit Linda had never seen me wear. I hadn't worn a suit like this in years, preferring jeans and boots, living under the radar. But today wasn't a day for blending in. Linda was already at Sterling Equity, pacing around the conference hall, checking her hair in the reflection of a window, her phone buzzing with congratulations from co-workers who thought she was about to become vice president. She texted me, "Big day. Wish me luck." I replied, "Always." As I walked into the building, people barely glanced at me. To them, I was just another gray-haired man in a suit, maybe an investor, maybe a consultant. They didn't know I was the man who now owned the very walls they worked in. Martin, the outgoing CEO, shook my hand in the hallway, his voice low. "Everything's set, Mr. Aldridge. You'll be introduced after my retirement announcement." I nodded, scanning the room, spotting Linda near the front, standing next to Eric. He was leaning in, whispering something that made her laugh softly, touching his arm in that way that used to be mine. I felt nothing. When Martin took the stage, announcing his retirement, the room buzzed with whispers. Linda's eyes glowed with excitement, thinking the stage was hers next. Then Martin cleared his throat. "And now, it is my honor to introduce Sterling Equity's new owner, the man whose vision will guide us forward. Mr. Grant Aldridge." Every head in the room turned. Linda's smile froze, her eyes widening as she realized who was walking up to the microphone. Eric's face drained of color. "Thank you, Martin," I began, letting my voice carry through the slants. "I'm honored to continue the legacy of Sterling Equity. But to build our future, we need leaders who embody integrity, loyalty, and true ambition. Not the kind that steps on others to get ahead." Fellas, would you have walked into that room and faced them down like this? Let me know in the comments if you would have had the guts. Because that moment was only the beginning. You could hear a pin drop when I stepped off that stage. Linda stood frozen, clutching the edge of her chair like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Eric tried to speak to her, but she shook him off, eyes locked on me as I moved through the crowd of stunned executives. I took my place at the head table, nodding to Harold, my finance man, and Pamela from HR, both of whom had worked for months to prepare this day. The champagne flutes clinked, but no one was celebrating, not yet. Eric stepped up to the podium next, clearing his throat, trying to salvage the moment. Today, we also celebrate the promotion of Linda Aldridge to Vice President of Operations, he announced, forcing a smile, glancing nervously in my direction. Linda walked up, smiling that polished smile she had perfected in front of mirrors in boardrooms, accepting the plaque with trembling hands. She turned toward the audience, ready to give a speech about hard work and dedication. I raised a hand, stopping her. Before we continue, there's another matter we need to address. Eric's face went pale. Linda's eyes darted between us. Eric Doyle, I said calmly, effective immediately, your employment with Sterling Equity is terminated. Gasps rippled through the room. Eric stammered, on what grounds? I nodded to Pamela, who handed over a folder. Sexual misconduct, fraudulent expense reports, abuse of power with multiple employees. I turned back to the room. Sterling Equity will not tolerate leaders who exploit others for personal gain. 2 security guards appeared, stepping forward. Eric's face twisted with rage, his eyes cutting toward Linda. Ask your wife why I'm being fired, he shouted, pointing at her as the guards grabbed his arms. Linda's face went white, her mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. Fellas, have you ever seen the exact moment someone realizes they've lost everything they gambled for? Tell me in the comments if you've witnessed that look. Because as they dragged Eric out, Linda knew. Her secrets weren't secret anymore, and I wasn't finished yet. The conference room cleared out slowly, a hushed storm of whispers trailing in the wake of Eric's screams as security dragged him away. Linda stood frozen near the podium, clutching that VP plaque like it might shield her from what was coming. I stepped forward, locking eyes with her across the emptying room. Congratulations, Vice President Aldridge, I said evenly, loud enough for the remaining staff to hear. You've earned this position. Her lips trembled. Grant, we need to talk. Not here, I replied, glancing around at the eyes that were still watching us, waiting for the next blow to fall. My office. Now. We walked the silent hallway together, her heels clicking on the polished floor, each step a drumbeat of dread. She kept glancing at me, but I kept my eyes forward, my face calm. Inside my office, once Martin's, now mine, I closed the door softly. Linda stood by the window, looking out at the Austin skyline she once called her future. How long have you known? She whispered. 8 months, 3 days, I answered, pouring myself a glass of water. The day you checked into that hotel with Eric. She sank into the leather chair across from me, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. Grant, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. A mistake, I repeated, setting the glass down. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. What you did was a choice, over and over again. Are you firing me? She choked out. No, I said, leaning back. You're good at your job, Linda. You've earned this title and I won't take it from you. But as for us, I pulled a thick envelope from my drawer, dropping it on the table between us. Our marriage is over. Divorce papers. You'll keep your salary, your car, your personal accounts. I keep everything else. Fellas, have you ever had to stand firm and let go of someone who betrayed you even when it hurt? Let me know in the comments if you faced that choice. Linda stared at the papers, tears dripping onto the table. as she realized the final cost of her ambition. And I walked out, leaving her to sit alone in her new office, knowing she'd won the title, at the price of losing me. They say it's quiet after the storm, but they don't tell you the quiet can be the loudest sound in your life. A week after handing Linda those divorce papers, I settled back into my routine. Early mornings on the ranch, coffee at dawn, reading reports from Sterling Equity while the Texas sun broke the horizon. The takeover was complete, the betrayal confronted, the divorce in motion. But there was one problem left: Eric Doyle. Despite being fired in front of everyone, he wouldn't let it go. He called Linda, leaving voicemails at 2:00 a.m. He sent her emails laced with threats and desperation, blaming her for his downfall, for the scandal that now followed him across Austin like a shadow. Linda tried to keep her distance, but the tension was eating at her. She'd lost everything that mattered except the title she thought would save her, and now Eric was clawing at her life, demanding she help him take me down to reclaim what he lost. She came to my office one afternoon, her eyes tired, shoulders slumped, holding her phone out with Eric's latest message. "He wants to meet," she said quietly. "He wants to blackmail you. He thinks I'll help." I studied her face. She was scared. For the first time in a long time, I saw Linda as the woman I once loved. Vulnerable, alone, realizing the cost of every choice she'd made. "What did you tell him?" I asked. "That I wanted nothing to do with it," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "He says he'll come here if I don't help." I nodded slowly, leaning back in my chair. "If he wants to come, let him." Linda looked up, confused. "Grant, we're done letting him control the narrative," I said, standing up. "Let him come." Fellas, have you ever had to protect your name and your peace from someone who just couldn't let go? Drop a stand your ground in the comments if you know that battle. Because Eric was about to learn that I wasn't a man to be threatened, and the next time he showed up, it wouldn't end with words. They always think they can scare you into submission, but fear doesn't work on men who've already lost everything that mattered. It was a Tuesday mid-morning when the call came through from security. "Mr. Aldridge, we have a situation. Eric Doyle just walked into the lobby. He bypassed the front desk and he's carrying something under his jacket." I stood from my desk, the leather creaking beneath me, and slipped my Colt .45 from the safe, holstering it under my suit jacket. I'm not a man who looks for violence, but I won't run from it either. I walked down the hallway, each step steady as alarms started to blare and employees rushed toward the exits. Through the glass walls of the 28th floor conference room, I saw him, Eric, hair disheveled, eyes wild, hand inside his coat as he shouted at Linda and her team, who were frozen in fear around the table. Linda's eyes met mine through the glass, wide with panic. Eric was screaming, "This is your fault, Linda! You ruined everything!" I stepped into the doorway, my voice calm but loud enough to cut through the chaos. "Eric, it ends today." He spun around, pulling a handgun from his coat, pointing it wildly. "You think you're untouchable, Grant? You think you can take everything from me?" I kept my hands steady, my gaze locked on him. "Put the gun down, Eric." "Or what?" He spat, waving the weapon, tears mixing with sweat on his face. "What are you gonna do, old man?" I drew my Colt, leveling it at him with the calm I'd built over 62 years of surviving life's storms. "I'll do what needs to be done." Fellas, have you ever faced down a man who thought fear could control you? Drop a fearless in the comments if you know that feeling. Because in that moment, with my wife's life, my employees' lives, and my dignity on the line, I was ready. And Eric was about to find out I don't bluff. The room held its breath. Eric's hand shook, finger twitching on the trigger as he glanced between me and Linda, who was frozen behind the conference table, tears streaming down her face. Her team huddled together, fear radiating off them like heat. "Eric, this is your last chance," I said, my Colt steady, my eyes never leaving his. "Put the gun down and you might walk out of here alive." "Alive!" he screamed, voice cracking. "You already killed me, Grant. You took my job, my future, my reputation." I took a slow step forward, my boots clicking on the polished floor, the sound echoing in the silent room. "I didn't take those things, Eric. You gave them away with your choices." He let out a strangled sob, his gun wavering toward Linda. "Maybe I'll take something from you then." And that was it. I pulled the trigger once, the gun's crack slicing through the silence like a lightning bolt. The bullet hit Eric's shoulder, spinning him backward, his gun clattering to the floor as he crashed against the glass wall, sliding down with a scream of pain. Linda screamed too, dropping to the floor, hands over her head as security rushed in, weapons drawn, surrounding Eric as he bled and sobbed, the fight finally leaving his eyes. I lowered my Colt, exhaling slowly, my heart pounding but my hands still steady. I looked at Linda, who was shaking, looking up at me with an expression I couldn't read. Fear, relief, regret, maybe all at once. "Secure the weapon, get him medical attention, and call the police," I told the security team, holstering my Colt. "This is over." Fellas, have you ever had to protect everything you worked for, everything you stood for in a single moment? Drop a "I stand ready" in the comments if you know what it's like to face down chaos without blinking. Because in that moment I became the man I had always promised myself I would be. And Linda knew it too. They led Eric out in handcuffs, blood soaking through the bandage on his shoulder, his eyes empty as he passed me. For a moment I saw the man he used to be before greed and ego swallowed him. But sympathy has no place in survival. Linda sat on the floor back against the conference table, breathing hard, tears streaking her mascara. I holstered my Colt, stepped toward her and extended a hand. She flinched before taking it, letting me pull her to her feet. "Thank you," she whispered, voice trembling. "For what?" I asked, my voice calm. "For saving my life." I met her gaze, steady and unblinking. I would have done the same for any employee. She swallowed, her eyes searching for something in my face, maybe hope, maybe forgiveness, but there was nothing left to give her. Later that day, the news spread like wildfire. Local business owner stops armed attacker at Sterling Equity. Reporters called me a hero. Employees looked at me with respect and fear. Linda. She looked at me with the weight of realization, understanding exactly what she had lost. In the weeks that followed, I finalized the divorce papers. Linda kept her title, her salary, and the apartment we once shared. I kept the company, my dignity, and the freedom that comes when you let go of what no longer serves you. I spent more mornings on the ranch, the Texas sun warming my face, black coffee in hand, breathing easier than I had in years. My phone buzzed with updates from Sterling, but I didn't rush to answer. I knew now that no title, no company, no person could define my worth. Fellas, have you ever had to burn down the life you built to save yourself? Drop a new beginnings in the comments if you know what that feels like. Because sometimes the real revenge isn't destroying those who wronged you. It's living free while they watch, knowing they lost the only man who ever stood by them. And that, my friends, is how you take your power back. So that's how it ended. A wife who lost a good man for a promotion. A snake who thought he could tear down a life built on grit. And a quiet man standing steady, reclaiming his dignity one choice at a time. I didn't need revenge in courtrooms or on the front page. I found it in the quiet mornings, the open Texas sky, and the peace that comes when you know who you are. If you've ever stood your ground, walked away stronger, and built a life no betrayal can touch, Drop a "I'm still standing" in the comments. Share this with a friend who needs to remember their worth. And if you want more stories of quiet men taking their power back, subscribe. Because out here the world may knock you down, but it's how you rise that defines you.